There are three truths about poison. It's patient, it's precise, and it doesn't care who swallows it. The mind is much the same way. Feed it enough bitterness, enough betrayal, and it will transform into something toxic, something that waits silently in the bloodstream of your life until the moment it stops your heart. Would you like to know what happens when a man discovers the calculated treachery hiding behind his wife's smile? When the elaborate architecture of revenge collapses under its own weight? When the rim of a crystal glass holds more than just the fingerprints of the person who last touched it? My name is Victor Blackwood, and this is the story of how I poisoned the wrong person. The Seattle rain tapped against the windows of our Queen Anne mansion like impatient fingers, creating a rhythm that had become the soundtrack to my suspicions. 44 years on this earth had taught me to recognize patterns. In consumer behavior, in market trends, and in the subtle shifts of my wife's affections. I adjusted my charcoal Brioni suit, catching my reflection in the window. Still fit, my hair now threaded with silver that Rebecca once said made me look distinguished, before she stopped noticing, before her eyes began to linger on someone else. Behind me, our home filled with the quiet murmur of Seattle's technology elite. 53 guests gathered to celebrate my recent promotion to Chief Product Officer at Neuratech. 53 potential witnesses to the private apocalypse brewing beneath our carefully curated surfaces. Victor, the man reinventing the digital frontier. Alan Preston, our CEO, approached with a tumbler of bourbon that sloshed dangerously, close to the rim with each animated gesture. This house is magnificent. Sarah outdid herself with the arrangements. She always does, I replied mechanically, scanning the crowded great room for my wife. Rebecca. 39 years old, with a doctorate in behavioral psychology and a talent for deception I'd grossly underestimated during our 12 years of marriage. She moved through the room in a deep emerald dress that caught the light like a predatory sea creature. Her smile practiced and perfect, her auburn hair swept into an elegant knot that exposed the vulnerable curve of her neck. That same neck Alex, Conrad, had tasted, according to the text messages I wasn't supposed to find. The secret email account I wasn't supposed to discover. The hidden hotel receipts for rooms booked on days when she was supposedly at academic conferences. Alex, my protégé, my right hand at Neuratech, 35, and ambitious, with the easy confidence of someone who'd never experienced true failure. Someone I'd mentored, promoted, trusted with proprietary algorithms, and eventually, unknowingly, my wife. The betrayal sat in my chest like a tumor, growing larger each day, feeding on every memory, every shared joke, every strategy session where he'd looked me in the eye knowing he'd been inside my wife the night before. But tonight, the balance would shift. I felt the weight of the small glass vial in my pocket, the contents colorless and odorless, a carefully researched compound ordered through layers of anonymity from a biochemist in Eastern Europe, a sophisticated cocktail of natural toxins that would cause acute gastrointestinal distress, temporary facial paralysis, and, most importantly, complete loss of bodily control. Not lethal, but devastating to the carefully constructed image of competence and authority I'd built over decades. Rebecca wanted to humiliate me. I'd discovered her plan 3 days ago, the marked glass she'd prepared for the toast, the suspicious powder I'd found hidden in her desk drawer, the darkly incriminating searches in her browser history. Untraceable poisons, symptoms, food poisoning, public humiliation psychology, amateur efforts from a woman who should have known better, who should have cleared her search history more thoroughly, who should have realized her husband had installed keystroke monitoring software on our home network after finding the first evidence of her affair. I spotted her by the custom-built aquarium that dominated our dining room wall, deep in conversation with Elise Chen, our chief legal counsel. Rebecca's hand fluttered to her throat as she laughed at something Elise said, a nervous gesture I'd observed since our first date at a small Italian restaurant in Portland, where she'd confessed to researching my academic publications before agreeing to dinner. Rebecca had always been thorough, except in covering her tracks. Need a refill? Alex appeared at my side, holding 2 tumblers of amber liquid, ice cubes clicking against crystal like tiny warning bells. The Macallan 25, only the best for the new CPO. I accepted the glass, studying him over the rim as I took a measured sip. His confidence remained intact, shoulders relaxed, smile easy, eyes clear, completely unaware that I knew every sordid detail of his betrayal, that I'd listened to audio recordings of them together in my own home, on days I was supposedly at industry conferences. Perfect choice, I said, the irony burning in my throat more than the scotch. Rebecca has been asking about you. Has she? His eyes flickered briefly toward my wife, a micro-expression of hunger flashing across his features before the professional mask slipped back into place. If I hadn't been watching for it specifically, I would have missed it entirely. I should say hello before the toast. In a moment, I rested my hand on his shoulder with carefully calibrated pressure. First, there's someone from Microsoft I'd like you to meet. Connections are everything in this industry. I guided him away from Rebecca's line of sight toward the bar where Gabriella, our longtime event bartender, was arranging crystal flutes on a silver tray. The special glasses, including Rebecca's marked one, waited at the end, separated slightly as she'd left them earlier. Rebecca had been clever in her selection, Waterford crystal, with a distinctive pattern that made the microscopic smudge of her Chanel lipstick on the rim nearly invisible. But I'd spent hours studying those glasses under different lighting conditions after discovering her plot. The mark was clear as a scream to me now. Almost time for the toast, I remarked. Rebecca insisted on the 2010 Louis Roederer Cristal. Apparently it pairs well with career advancement. Your wife has impeccable taste, Alex said, the hidden meaning hanging between us like cigarette smoke in a sealed room. I watched Gabriella fill each flute with the pale gold champagne. Bubbles, racing toward the surface like my accelerating thoughts. Soon, very soon. Sir, would you like me to serve? Gabriella asked when all glasses were filled. No need. This is personal. I lifted the tray with steady hands. Alex, would you mind asking Rebecca to join us in the center of the room and grab Alan and Christine? On your way. He moved through the crowd with the ease of someone accustomed to navigating social hierarchies. I watched him approach Rebecca, observed the subtle straightening of her posture, the fractional widening of her eyes when he leaned close to relay my message. So many small betrayals, preserved in body language and micro-expressions, I studied. The array of identical crystal flutes on the tray, each capturing and fracturing light from the minimalist chandeliers above. One glass contained more than just champagne. It held Rebecca's specially selected punishment, intended for me. But fate, or rather my intervention, had different plans. Rebecca approached, her smile tight as she took her position beside me. Alex flanked her other side, with Alan and Christine Preston completing our small circle of power and deceit. "Time for a toast," I announced, loud enough to draw attention from nearby clusters of guests. To mark this special occasion, I began distributing the glasses from the tray, starting with Alan and Christine. My hand hovered over the marked glass momentarily before passing it, not to Rebecca as she expected, and not to myself as she'd planned, but to Alex, for my right-hand man, I said smoothly, watching Rebecca's face as understanding crawled across her features like a venomous insect, who's been behind me every step of the way. The blood drained from her face so rapidly I thought she might faint. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. I handed her an unmarked glass, my fingers brushing hers deliberately. And for my devoted wife, without whom none of this would be possible. I took the last glass for myself, raising it high. To innovation, I proclaimed, and to seeing clearly what's right in front of us. To innovation, echoed the crowd. Rebecca stood frozen, champagne untouched, as Alex raised the poisoned glass to his lips and drank deeply. Her eyes, wide with horror, met mine over the rim of her own glass. I held her gaze as I sipped my champagne, a silent conversation passing between us. "I know what you planned. I know that you know. The game is over, and you've lost." The champagne was exceptional. Notes of pear and brioche with a mineral finish that lingered on the tongue. Rebecca didn't touch hers. Smart woman. Now we waited 23 minutes. That's how long we had until Rebecca's concoction took effect, according to my research into the compound I'd found in her desk. 23 minutes of small talk and congratulations, of professional networking and social niceties, all while the clock ticked down in both our heads. I kept her close, my hand resting on the small of her back. Not affection, but containment, a gentle pressure that communicated, "Stay put. Watch what unfolds. Witness the consequences of your actions." "You don't understand what you've done," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise. "I understand perfectly," I replied, my smile never faltering as I nodded to a passing investor. "The question is, do you?" 18 minutes. Alex still circulated through the crowd, champagne glass now empty, completely unaware of the biochemical time bomb ticking in his system. He looked confident, relaxed, a man on the rise, riding the coattails of his mentor's success while secretly sleeping with his mentor's wife. Blissfully ignorant that both of us had plans that involved his downfall, though only one would materialize tonight. 15 minutes. "It won't kill him," Rebecca said, voice tight with controlled panic. "But it's going to be severe. We need to get him out of here. And miss the denouement? That would be disappointing." I sipped my water, having discreetly set aside the champagne. "Besides, I'm curious to see exactly what you had planned for me." Her fingers twisted the small emerald pendant at her throat, eyes darting around the room as if searching for escape routes. "This isn't some psychological experiment, Victor. He could have an unexpected reaction. People will ask questions." "People are already asking questions, Rebecca. About us. About you. About why the renowned behavioral psychologist suddenly rescheduled her entire spring lecture series to align with the business trips of a man 15 years her junior." Her eyes snapped to mine, pupils contracting with shock. "What are you talking about? Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't investigate? You've been careless, Rebecca. Dangerously careless. 10 minutes. Across the room, Alex tugged at his collar, a sheen of sweat suddenly visible on his forehead. He excused himself from a conversation with an investor, making a direct line toward the hallway that led to the powder room. "Looks like your formula works faster than expected," I remarked. "Fascinating." Rebecca made a move to follow him, but my hand on her waist tightened, fingers pressing into the soft flesh above her hip with enough force to make her wince. "Stay," I murmured. "We wouldn't want to draw unnecessary attention." 5 minutes. Alex hadn't returned. The murmur of conversation continued around us, oblivious to the drama unfolding in our downstairs bathroom. Rebecca's breathing had accelerated, shallow and quick, her skin pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "You've done something," she whispered. "Something beyond switching the glasses." I smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach my eyes. "What makes you think that?" "Because I know you, Victor. You never do anything halfway. Switching the glasses would be too simple." She was right, of course. The poison champagne was merely Act 1. The real performance was yet to begin. 2 minutes. A strangled cry echoed from the hallway, followed by a heavy thud. Conversations stuttered, heads turning toward the sound. Then came the unmistakable retching, violent and prolonged, followed by gasps of pain that raised the hair on my arms. The compound was more potent than I'd anticipated, or perhaps Rebecca had increased the dosage, her hatred for me greater than I'd calculated. "Ladies and gentlemen," I addressed the startled guests, "it seems my colleague may be unwell. Rebecca, perhaps you should check on him. You two are close after all." I released her then, giving her a gentle push toward the hallway. All eyes followed as she moved woodenly toward the sounds of distress, the crowd parting to reveal Alex on his knees in the hallway, his body convulsing as sweat poured down his face. The scene was more grotesque than I'd imagined. Projectile, vomiting, involuntary defecation, facial muscles spasming uncontrollably. Several guests gasped. Someone screamed. A voice called for an ambulance. I watched Rebecca kneel beside him, heedless of the mess, trying to stabilize him as his body rebelled against itself. Such devotion, such guilt, both would be useful in the coming hours. "Everyone stay calm," I said authoritatively, approaching the scene. "Give him space." I knelt on Alex's other side, adopting the concerned expression of a boss worried about his valued employee. "Help is on the way," I said loudly enough for onlookers to hear. "Just breathe, Alex." Then, pitched only for the three of us. Unexpected reactions can be so unpredictable, can't they? Especially when combined with other substances. Alex's eyes, wild with pain and confusion, darted between us. Even through his agony, I saw the moment understanding dawned. He wasn't just suffering from poison. He was the battlefield in a marital war. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I extracted it casually, reading the message that flashed across the screen. "Unknown. I know what you both did. Look in the northeast corner of the room." I glanced at Rebecca, whose own phone had chimed with the same notification. Her eyes widened, then tracked to the designated corner where an emergency exit led to our back garden. Nothing was there, just shadows cast by the aquarium's blue glow. Then I saw it, a small red light, blinking steadily from the darkness, a camera. Perhaps I'd miscalculated after all. The paramedics arrived minutes later, their efficient movements disrupting our frozen tableau. Questions were asked about what Alex had consumed, how long he'd been symptomatic. Rebecca answered automatically, suggesting a severe allergic reaction, while I maintained my concerned facade, all the while feeling the weight of that text message like a cold stone in my stomach. After they whisked Alex away on a stretcher, I smoothly concluded the evening, thanking guests for coming and promising updates on Alex's condition. The house emptied gradually, shock and morbid excitement fueling whispered speculation as they departed. When the door closed behind the last guest, Rebecca and I stood facing each other in the cavernous foyer, the remnants of our shattered evening scattered between us like broken glass. "Northeast corner," she said, her voice flat. I saw it. We moved in silent tandem toward the aquarium, its blue light casting our shadows in elongated, distorted shapes across the hardwood floor. In the corner, partially hidden by a potted fern, sat a small black device the size of a matchbox, a camera still recording, its red light pulsing like a mechanical heartbeat. Rebecca reached for it, but I caught her wrist. "Don't touch it. We don't know who placed it there or what else they might have done." "Who would?" she began, then stopped, understanding darkening her features. "Alex wouldn't." "Are you certain? A man discovering he's been used as a pawn might take precautions." But even as I said it, doubt crept in. The camera was too professionally positioned, too well concealed. Alex was many things, but not this methodical. My phone chimed again. Another message. "Unknown. Second floor master bedroom. Now. Both of you." Rebecca's phone buzzed with the same instruction. We ascended the stairs without speaking, bound by mutual destruction. A twisted intimacy potentially stronger than the marriage, vows we'd both betrayed. The bedroom door was closed, though I was certain I'd left it open earlier. Rebecca hesitated, her hand on the doorknob, eyes meeting mine in a rare moment of genuine connection. Shared fear. "Together," I said quietly. She nodded and pushed the door open. The room appeared undisturbed at first glance. King-sized bed still perfectly made, gas fireplace flickering with programmed flames, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the twinkling Seattle skyline beyond the persistent rain. Then I saw it, my laptop open on the bed, screen glowing with an active video call. A figure sat in shadow, features obscured, waiting. "Hello, Victor. Hello, Rebecca." The voice was digitally altered, gender and identity impossible to determine. "I hope you've enjoyed your evening's entertainment. Someone with a front row seat to your mutual destruction," the voice replied. "Someone who's been watching for quite some time." Rebecca stepped forward, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "What do you want?" A simple acknowledgement of what I've witnessed. Victor planning to sabotage Rebecca's already poisoned glass. Rebecca planning to humiliate her husband. Both of you willing to harm an innocent third party to further your vendettas. Blood turned to ice water. They knew everything. "I don't know what you're talking about," Rebecca attempted, her professional training kicking in despite the circumstances. The figure laughed, the sound distorted into something inhuman by the voice modulator. "No? Then perhaps this will refresh your memory." "Who are you?" I demanded, moving toward the computer. "Someone with a front row seat to your mutual destruction," the voice replied. "Someone who's been watching for quite some time." Rebecca stepped forward, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "What do you want?" A simple acknowledgement of what I've witnessed. Victor planning to sabotage Rebecca's already poisoned glass. Rebecca planning to humiliate her husband. Both of you willing to harm an innocent third party to further your vendettas. My blood turned to ice water. They knew everything. I don't know what you're talking about, Rebecca attempted, her professional training kicking in despite the circumstances. The figure laughed, the sound distorted into something inhuman by the voice modulator. No? Then perhaps this will refresh your memory. The screen split, one side showing the shadowy figure, the other displaying video footage of me in our home office, carefully examining crystal glasses under a desk lamp, identifying Rebecca's marked glass. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m. 3 nights ago. The footage changed to Rebecca, in the same office the following afternoon, measuring powder into a small vial, testing it on the rim of a glass, then carefully wiping it clean except for the faintest lipstick mark. "How did you get this?" I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Your smart home isn't as secure as you think, Victor. Neither are your devices, Rebecca. But that's not important right now." The figure leaned forward, still shrouded in darkness. "What matters is what happens next. In exactly 5 minutes, similar footage will be sent to the police, along with documentation of the substances Rebecca procured and the symptoms they cause. Documentation that matches precisely what happened to Alex Conrad tonight." Rebecca sank onto the edge of the bed, her composure finally cracking. "It was never meant for Alex. No, it was meant for your husband, just as his additional compound was meant for you, in case you sampled your own concoction." My head snapped up in surprise. There was no additional compound. I'd simply switched the glasses, nothing more. The figure noticed my reaction. "Oh, Victor, didn't tell you." He added his own special ingredient to all the champagne, except his own glass. "Something to enhance the effects of your poison, Rebecca. Something to ensure maximum humiliation." "That's a lie," I said quickly, though doubt crept through me. Was someone setting up an elaborate frame, creating conflict where there was already plenty? "Is it?" The figure countered. "Ask yourself why Alex's reaction was so severe. Why it happened faster than expected. Why the symptoms were more dramatic than your research suggested." Rebecca stared at me, eyes wide with dawning horror. "What did you do?" "Nothing beyond switching the glasses," I insisted. "They're manipulating us against each other." 4 minutes until the police received the evidence, the figure reminded us, along with the address of the hospital where Alex was taken. "Doctors are already noting unusual compounds in his system, compounds that don't align with typical allergic reactions." "What do you want?" Rebecca and I asked in unison. The figure sat back, seemingly satisfied with our desperation. "I want you to understand consequences. I want you to experience the helplessness of being manipulated by someone you trusted, just as I did." And then I knew. The voice alteration couldn't hide the cadence, the specific word choices, the psychological approach. This was no stranger. "Christine," I said quietly. Rebecca's head whipped toward me, then back to the screen. "Alan's wife. What does she have to do with this?" The figure was silent for a moment, then reached forward. The screen adjusted, brightness increasing to reveal Christine Preston's elegant features, her expression cold and composed. "Very good, Victor. Always the problem solver." "I don't understand," Rebecca said. "Why would you do this?" Christine's laugh was brittle. "Because 3 years ago, when Alan was considering stepping down as CEO, you two conspired to prevent him from naming me as his successor, despite my 15 years as COO, despite my proven track record. Victor, you convinced the board I was too emotional for leadership, and you, Rebecca, provided the psychological profile that suggested I would be unstable under pressure. I remembered those conversations, those reports. We'd believed we were acting in the company's best interest. Clearly, Christine felt otherwise. So this is revenge? I asked. This is consequence, Christine corrected, for your manipulation, your betrayal, your willingness to destroy anyone who stands in your way, even each other. She checked her watch. 3 minutes. What do you want from us? Rebecca demanded, desperation edging her voice. Your resignations, effective immediately. Full divestment of your Neurotech shares, transferred to a fund for employees you've both stepped on during your rise to power. I calculated rapidly, millions of dollars, years of work, our entire professional identities. And if we refuse, I challenged, then Alex's medical records show attempted poisoning. The police receive footage of both of you planning it. Your careers end anyway, but with criminal charges attached. Christine shrugged. Your choice. We need time to consider. Rebecca began. 2 minutes, Christine interrupted. And while you debate, consider this. I already sent similar footage to Alex this morning. He knows exactly what you both planned. He knows who poisoned him and why. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Alex knew, had known all evening, had accepted the marked glass anyway, playing his part in a larger game I hadn't even known existed. He was working with you, I said slowly. That's why he brought me the scotch earlier, to establish his innocence in whatever happened later. Christine smiled, a cold expression that transformed her usually warm features into something predatory. Alex has his own grievances against you both, his own reasons for wanting to see you fall. Finding allies is simple when you've created so many enemies. 1 minute. Rebecca and I exchanged glances, the first honest communication we'd had in months. A silent acknowledgement of mutual destruction, of options narrowed to a pinpoint. We'll resign, I said finally. But we need assurances this ends here. No further exposures, no additional demands. You're hardly in a position to negotiate, Christine observed. But yes, once the resignations are submitted and the transfers complete, all footage will be deleted. Alex will attribute his episode to a previously unknown shellfish allergy. Life will continue, just not the lives you've become accustomed to. 30 seconds. We agree, Rebecca said, her voice hollow with defeat. Christine nodded once, satisfied. The necessary paperwork will arrive by courier tomorrow morning. Sign it, return it, and this unfortunate chapter closes for all of us. She leaned closer to the camera. But remember this feeling, this helplessness, this violation of trust. Remember it the next time you consider using people as pawns in your private games. The screen went dark, leaving Rebecca and I standing in our bedroom, strangers with a shared catastrophe. Outside, the Seattle rain continued its relentless percussion against the windows, indifferent to the implosion of lives within. Did you really add something to enhance the effects? Rebecca asked, after a long silence. No, I answered truthfully. Did you increase the dosage beyond what you'd researched? She shook her head. It was measured precisely. Another silence stretched between us, filled with the ghosts of what we'd been to each other once, what we'd become, what we'd lost. What happens now? She asked finally. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved, the stranger she'd become, the person who had planned my humiliation with the same methodical care she'd once applied to building our life together. Now we face consequences, I said simply, just not the ones we anticipated. We stood there as the minutes ticked by, the space between us uncrossable, united only by our mutual disgrace. Outside our window, Seattle continued to exist, oblivious. Inside, in the ruins of our carefully constructed lives, we faced the most terrifying prospect of all. The morning after the night when everything changed, the bitter taste of vengeance, it turned out, was nothing compared to the acid flavor of failure, and both of us would be swallowing it for a very long time to come.